Wuthering Waves version 2.4 story has finally wrapped up, and once again, Kuro has absolutely nailed this. I honestly don't know how they keep doing this. You think one story is peak and the next one drops and you're like, oh my god, this is insane. There's been a part of me that wonders, can there be too much greatness? Like, will we eventually get numb to how consistently amazing the storytelling, the world building, the pacing, just everything is? Because right now, I am genuinely at a loss for words, and yes, I am glazing Wuthering Waves, I am glazing Kuro Games, and I am glazing this story. Bite me. But in this video, we're gonna break everything all down, every single part of this version story, because no matter how incredible something is, nothing is flawless from start to finish. There were parts that fell off, sections I wish had been done a little better, and moments that could have used more polish. We're going to dive into both the highest highs and the lowest lows. So if you're into this kind of content, hit the like button and let me know what you think about the story. Was it crazy for you as it was for me, or am I just overhyping it? Put it all down in the comments, and of course subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on any of my future videos. Alright, let's get into it. Now usually in reviews like this, I start with a quick summary of the story, then I talk about what I liked and what I didn't like, drop a rating, and then we move on. But this time, I want to do things a little differently. Instead of a brief summary, we're going to go through the entire story together, step by step, plot point by plot points, character introductions, major twists, minor moments, everything. And as we go through, I'll tell you exactly how I feel about each part. I'm doing it this way because honestly, the story is too deep and too layered to just gloss over. A short summary wouldn't do it justice. And I want this to feel immersive, like you're right there with me, feeling what I felt as the story unfolded. Now, this might turn into a long video, I don't know yet, but by the end of it, you'll understand exactly how I felt about every single part of the version story, and what makes the world it takes place in so fascinating. Alright, let's start right at the beginning. The story kicks off with us noticing something strange. There's been a disturbance in Cartethyia's frequency. Now, we have this sort of link with her. So if something is off with her, we feel it, and if something is off with us, she feels it too. So naturally, we head over to the Avenelium to check things out. But when we get there, Cartethyia is nowhere to be found. What we do discover though, is that her frequency is now coming from somewhere completely different. An archipelago across Raguna called Septimons. This is a brand new area in Wuthering Waves, and up until now, we know basically nothing about it. So we call Cartethyia to fill us in, and what she tells us, well, it's mostly stuff we've already heard. That Septimont is a land shaped by war, a place built on conflict and strength, something the trailers and promo materials have been hinting on from the start. But then something interesting happens. Cartethyia says something that feels off. She either lies to us, or at the very least, she misleads us. And I like to believe that this wasn't an accident. I think Kuro did this on purpose. You see, Cartethyia tells us that Septimontians, the people of Septimont, don't believe in the Sentinel, and that's kind of misleading. Because when we actually arrive in Septimont, it becomes clear that while the people don't revere the Sentinel, like those in Raguna do, they do believe in it. They acknowledge the Sentinel's existence, but they just relate to it differently. And I really want to highlight this because this feeds into something much bigger. You see, Cartethyia also tells us that there is tension and underlying animosity between Raguna and Septimont, and this whole belief versus reverence divide is a part of it. I think what Kuro is trying to show us here is how deep that rift runs. It's not just political, it's cultural. What makes it so interesting is that these two nations aren't even that far apart geographically, but that mistrust, especially coming from Raguna towards Septimont, has created a communication gap so wide that one side don't even understand the other's beliefs. Cartethyia words aren't just a slip, they're a reflection of that divide. A misunderstanding born from distance, pride, and probably a bit of fear from the whole city of Raguna. Anyway, after wrapping up our conversation with Cartethyia, we set out for Septimont. Now, in classic Kuro fashion, the world of Septimont is absolutely stunning. The moment we arrive is just breathtaking, and the music, man, I love what they did with the music in Septimont. They play this beautiful track as we first step into the region, and here's the cool part. It's the same music they use at the end of the story, and I love that. It bookends the entire experience. And at the start, it feels like the beginning of this epic journey, full of energy, wonder, and anticipation. At the end, it feels reflective, calm, and satisfying, like you've just come out of something meaningful, and that contrast is absolute perfection. But then, as we land in Septimont, we immediately notice something is off. For one, we don't have access to Abby, which is weird. Then the game does something unexpected. We suddenly cut off away from the rover's perspective, and now we're following Cartethyia. And our version of Septimont is different from the same vibrant, lively land we just saw. It's darker, it's gloomier. There is this airy, almost twisted atmosphere to it. So right away, we're left thinking, what's going on here? Why are these two versions of the same place so different? Now, from a point of view, we're thrown into a mission, and there's no real context, no explanation of what she was doing before or what's coming after, but all we know is this. She has a task, and that task is to destroy a certain machine. Now, this is where I hit my first real issue with Wuthering Waves, and honestly, I've already made a full video on this, but I have to bring it up again because it's still super irritating. So as Cartethyia, we're given a mission to destroy this strange machine. We don't know exactly what it is yet, more context comes later, but the goal is clear. Destroy different parts of the machine to shut the whole thing down. But here's the problem. Kuro chose to present this sequence using a QTE, a quick time event. Now, for those who don't know, QTEs are supposed to be interactive. They're meant to test your timing and your reactions. The fun of QTE is the fact that you can feel. It adds pressure and urgency to the moment. But in this case, whether you press the button or not, Cartethyia still does the exact same thing. There's no consequence, no branching path, no reward or punishment, just flashy animation dressed up like you have control, when you really don't. And that really bugged me, because this could have been a powerful immersive moment, a hands-on experience that actually meant something. But instead, it felt like we were just spectators, even though the game was pretending to involve us. Anyway, after the machine is destroyed, we suddenly see a strange woman emerge from it, someone we've never seen before. And immediately there is this tension. It feels like something is about to go down between her and Cartethyia. But right as that moment builds, the camera cuts and we're suddenly back with the rover. So as the rover, our mission is pretty clear. Find Cartethyia, simple enough. So we head over to the nearest settlement to ask around and see if anybody has seen her. Now, ever since the Gacha trailer dropped, I've actually been looking forward to interacting with NPCs in Wuthering Waves. And yeah, not every NPC in the game is super interesting, but the game has shown that when they lock in and tie NPCs into the main story, those characters can be really entertaining. So weirdly enough, NPC interactions have actually become something I genuinely look forward to in this game. And the ones in these settlements, they do not waste time. They skip all the pointless filler dialogue that a lot of gacha games love to throw at you. These NPCs get straight to the point, which I deeply appreciate. They tell us about something called the Great Agon, basically a massive battle royale to determine the strongest warrior. They also mention Arsinosa, who is kind of like the guardian deity of Septimont. But here's the part that really caught my attention. We're told that Arsinosa was born from the battles of Septimont, and this is huge because we already know Arsinosa is an echo. So this basically answers a major question: how were echoes created? If an echo can be born from the sheer intensity and history of battle, then there's way more going on with the echoes and tacit discourse than we previously understood. These small details add a whole new layer to the whole world of Wuthering Waves. It's also in these settlements that we finally get a clear picture of how Septimontans view the Sentinel. And that's actually really interesting. Even though they don't worship or revere the Sentinel like other regions, they do appreciate it. They acknowledge its presence and its role, but in their own way. It's another small detail that adds depth to their culture and the world as a whole. And then right after that, we get one of the best examples I've seen in a very long time of the phrase first impressions matter, because this is where we meet Bulling, possibly the best 4-star in Wuthering Waves right now. And the way the game chooses to introduce her is absolute perfection.
Boss, you're looking so serious.
And you are...
Me? I'm a traveling Taoist from Mengzhou. Just call me Buling. Exorcism, talisman divination, fortune telling, you name it, I bling it. So, you wanna try your luck, Fa?
You see, as we spend more time with Buling, we learned that she's connected to Jiangxin, a character we met back in Jingzhou. And as it turned out, they both trained under the same master, which is cool because I believe that master has already been shown in Wuthering Waves Drake marketing. So that instantly gives us something to look forward to. But back to Buling, meeting her makes something very clear. This whole Septimon situation is way bigger than we initially thought. There's more at play here, more connections and more complexity. Also, there's something about Buling, something that doesn't quite click for me yet. I'm not going to go into it right now, but I want you to keep this interaction in mind because I'll revisit it at the end of this entire breakdown, because there's something about her character that still has me a little puzzled. But for now, Buling leaves a strong first impression, and then we continue on our journey. So after wrapping up our interaction with Buling and the surrounding NPCs, we get introduced to Lupa. And listen, if you thought Buling made a strong first impression, just watch this clip.
Not bad!
Think you can keep me from fighting? Careful now! We'll see who rips whose throat out first.
I mean, come on. As I was writing this script, it actually hit me that Lupa was holding her staff with her tail in this scene. I mean, it's just all insanely cool. And honestly, Lupa is such a good example of the level of detail and character work Kuro is putting into Wuthering Waves right now. Everything she does is packed with expression, the way she talks, the way she moves, her facial expression with every word. You don't even need to know her backstory to get a sense of who she is. You just feel it immediately. It's stunning character work. Anyway, we soon find out that Lupa's team has been rigging matches and Lupa is not having any of it. She's a gladiator too, just like them, but she's one who actually believes in fighting fair. She's all about integrity, about earning victory the right way. And when she realizes that her team doesn't share that mindset, it creates a major rift. So she walks away, she disbands the team entirely. So now that Lupa is without a team, she decides to team up with us, and that makes sense. During that short interaction we had earlier, she saw that we know our way around the sword, and she respects that. Plus, she doesn't exactly have the time to go scouting for new teammates, so teaming up with us is the practical move. But then things take a strange turn. We notice something odd. There's a bit of Cartethyia frequency on Lupa's hand. It's faint, but it's there. And when we ask her about Cartethyia, she has absolutely no idea who she is, which is weird. And that weirdness only deepens the further we go. The situation just keeps growing more and more mysterious. Still, we agree to partner with Lupa, because at this point, she's the closest connection we have to Cartethyia, intentional or not. And by working with her, especially during the whole tournament arc, we might uncover more clues. Plus, if we manage to win the Great Agon, we'll earn a one-on-one with Arsinosa, and she might have real answers about where Cartethyia is. So now it's time for us and Lupa to take part in the qualifier battles, the matches we need to win in order to earn a spot in the Great Agon. Now here's something that kind of disappointed me. It's not a huge deal, but it definitely stuck with me. The first qualifier takes place in this really striking arena, and when we get there for the first time, there's already this massive NPC battle going on, like full-on chaos. It looked amazing. You could just stand there and watch it unfold. It felt alive. It pulled you right into the atmosphere of Septimons. But here's the thing. After we completed the qualifiers, and even after finishing the whole story arc, I went back to the same arena, and I was really hoping that I still see those NPC battles happening. You know, just something to give that area continued life. It would have been such a nice touch for world building, but nothing. No more battles, just NPCs standing around. Again, it's not a massive flaw or anything, but it was a big missed opportunity. That kind of small detail could have made the world feel much more dynamic, like things were still happening even when the story moves on. But yeah, it is what it is. We beat our opponents in the first qualifier and move on, and that's when we meet Katoa, Lupa's manager. Now, a lot of folks seem to think that Katoa is actually Cristoforo in disguise, and honestly, that theory struck me as really strange. I mean, of all people to disguise us, why would Cristoforo choose to be Lupa's manager? I get that Lupa plays an important role in this story, but if you really think about it, it just doesn't add up. Katoa's whole vibe is centered around money. He's focused on the business side of things, on reputation, on what the family thinks about Lupa disbanding her team. His concerns are rooted in politics and pressure, not in whatever deeper mystery surrounds us. So if this were actually Cristoforo in disguise, it would have made more sense for him to be focused more on us. I mean, we're the anomalies here, we're the unknown, not Lupa. Anyway, our meeting with Katoa gives us our first glimpse into the politics of Septimons, which we will dive into a bit later. But after that conversation wraps up, the story shifts again, this time back to Cartethyia's point of view. And we're told why the Septimon she's in feels dark and gloomy. It's been taken over by the dark tide. And here's where we get something even more interesting. Cartethyia meets Lupa, but this Lupa, she's nothing like the one we met. Gon is the energetic, loud, flamboyant gladiator. This version of Lupa is broken, both literally and figuratively. She's covered in injuries, completely drained, and worst of all, she doesn't even remember who she is. The game literally labels her as Nameless Girl. And because this version of Septimons is consumed by the Dark Tide, Lupa is suffering from something called the Tidal Blight, a condition caused by that corruption. All this just deepens the mystery. What exactly is going on here? How can there be two versions of Septimons? One that's fine, full of color and life, and another that's been swallowed by darkness. What is causing this divide? And to Wuthering Waves' credits, it handles this mystery really well. It doesn't rush to explain everything. It lets us, the players, sit in that tension just like the characters are. Always asking, always wondering what is actually happening here. Then we cut back to the Rover and Lupa, and finally we arrive at the heart of Septimons, the main city known as the Griffin's Fortress of Capitolini Hill. And this is where we finally start to dip into the political side of Septimons. So Septimons is ruled by the Ephor, basically the supreme leader of the region. But under the Ephor, there are the houses. And here's where things get interesting. In most places, houses might be ranked by status, influence, or wealth. But in Septimons, power is everything, literal power. The importance of your house depends entirely on your strength, your ability to repel tacit discords. The more capable your house is at fighting back these threats, the more influence you hold in the city. On the flip side, if your house isn't strong enough to contribute to defense, then, well, you're not important, simple as that. And honestly, I think this is a really cool way to structure political power. It's brutal, sure, but it makes total sense in a region built around war and strength. Now, the game doesn't go too deep into this. We touch on the political atmosphere just a bit, but we don't really explore the full structure. And that's something I really hope they build on in the future. Whether it's in a world quest or maybe in Augusta or Yuno's character quest, somebody's arc, I just really want to dive deeper into the politics of Septimons, because if they write it well, I think it could be one of the most interesting part of the entire region. After that, we go grab some food with Lupa, and it's here that it really hits us just how much of a celebrity she is. Like, there's a whole drink named after her, a full-on signature drink. It's a fun little moment, and it adds a nice layer to character detail. That sort of reminder that while she's this loud, brash fighter, she's also well-loved and known across Septimons. It's a small thing, but it adds depth. After that, we head to the hotel. Now, visually, the hotel looks great. I really like the design, but there's a tiny nitpick. What's supposed to be a window in the room is actually just a wallpaper. And look, I get it. Wuthering Waves has to consider mobile players, and it probably won't be fair if one version of the game gave certain players a better visual experience than others. So they just simplified it for everyone. but still I can't lie, it was disappointing. That moment where you expect to look out over the gorgeous cityscape only to be met with a flat wall texture. It's minor, but it broke the immersion just a little bit. Anyway, we settle in and fall asleep in the hotel, but instead of just resting, we find ourselves pulled into another realm. And this is where we have our first interaction with Phrolova. Now up to this point, the game has framed Phrolova not so much as a straight up villain, but more like a tragic one. She's not really painted as an anti-hero either, she's just someone wrapped up in a lot of pain and mystery. And while we don't fully know her story, we can tell that there's more going on than just bad guy does bad things. And when we meet her in this realm, she actually helps us. She explains what's going on, tells us about Christopher's existence, fills in a bunch of blanks, and she even gives us a book. Now this book is more than just a prop, it's actually a gameplay mechanic. At first it just summarizes what Phrolova told us, but as the story moves forward, it updates with new information from unfolding events. It's a really neat little feature. And I love that it serves as both a lore tool and a running record of story's evolution. But what really stands out here is the tone of the scene. You see, Phrolova clearly wants us to stop seeing her as the enemy. The game hints that she wants us to look at her differently now. And honestly, if that raises some red flags for you, it's totally fair. I completely get it. After all the time she stood against the rover, for her to say, hey, I'm not your enemy, definitely feels off. But I'm also glad with how the game handles the situation. The rover doesn't just suddenly forgive her. We don't let our guard down. The entire time we stay defensive, skeptical, and antagonistic. Just because she helps us doesn't mean we suddenly see her as an ally. Then the next day arrived, and we finally made it to the main tournament. We're on the biggest stage in the Great Agon, battling in front of thousands, maybe even tens of thousands of spectators. And this is where we get our first real introduction to the F4 herself, Augusta. Now, I love to hype up this moment, but honestly, it's not too different from what we already saw in the trailer. Yeah, she does speak a little bit more, gives us a little extra dialogue, but it's clear that Wuthering Waves is keeping her mysterious on purpose. They don't want to give too much away just yet, and honestly, I'm fine with that. I respect the slow burn. That said, I really hope Kuro Games delivers when it's finally time to tell her story. And no, I have not forgotten. I still owe you all a part 2 of the Augusta Malwika comparison. And I'm patiently waiting just like you for more of her arc to unfold so that I can jump right into that script. But Augusta isn't the only big reveal here. We're also introduced to Yuno, the head priestess of Septimont. I know some people have voiced concern about Yuno's outfit, but personally, I have zero issues. Both Augusta and Yuno are visually and thematically strong characters, and I cannot wait to pull for them. I know they're going to be amazing to play. But just like with Bulink, I want you to keep this first interaction with Augusta and Yuno in the back of your mind, because later on, all of this is going to come back into play. So now in this tournament match, we end up going against Lupa's former teammates. And if you remember, these teammates are still tied to the house that originally employed Lupa, that same house she walked away from. As the match kicks off, we discover that Lupa's staff, her actual weapon, has been tampered with. But even with the odds stacked against us, we still managed to beat them. After the match, we report everything that happened to Augusta. We tell her about the tampering, the rigging of matches, the house's shady behavior. And here's where things kind of fall apart for me. I really didn't like how the entire situation was handled. It felt rushed, like really rushed. Lupa makes a serious claim with no hard evidence, and Yuno just shows up and backs her up. And suddenly, the house is banished, just like that. No trial, no questioning, no digging deeper. It felt like the game just yada yada its way through a major story beat. Now maybe the idea is that Yuno has this overwhelming authority. Maybe we're supposed to see just how powerful she is within Septimon's politics. And that's cool in theory, but even then, it feels like this moment deserves more weight. I really hope we get to revisit this storyline. I want a deeper look into the house that employed Lupa. I want to understand the politics and power dynamics that led to all of this. Now, it's not a massive issue, it doesn't ruin the story, but it's something I felt was worth pointing out. Anyway, after all that, we run into Bulin again, and after chatting with her for a bit, she gives us a copper mirror. Now, whether this mirror shows us the past or let us peek into another dimension entirely, I'm not 100% sure. But based on how it has been used so far in the story, I'm leaning toward it showing us the past. That just seems to make the most sense with how the game's been treating it. So using this mirror, we look into the past, and that's when we finally get a proper introduction to a character who's been hovering around the edges of the story this whole time, Maya. And her story is absolutely tragic. Like Lupa, she's a gladiator, but unlike Lupa, Maya gets duped, used, and manipulated by her manager and basically everyone around her. She was taken advantage of, chewed up by the system, and left behind. And even though she won the Great Agon, she just vanished, disappeared without a trace. Maya is going to be important. The game is setting her up to be a key piece in all of this. So now it's time for the final battle in the tournament, the last match, and yeah, we're up against a group of NPCs, no surprise we win, but here's where things get weird. As we're fighting these NPCs, something happens. The rover's reality and Cartethyia's reality start to blend together. And even now, after the full story has been played out, the game really never gives us a solid explanation for why this happened. It just does. Suddenly, the rover can hear Cartethyia, and we get these incredible cinematic moments where the two realities sync. So while the rover is battling a horde of tacit discords, Cartethyia is off fighting a corrupted version of Alcinosa, and visually it is stunning. The pacing, the tension, the way both battles unfold in parallel, it's one of the coolest sequences in the entire game. Cartethyia ends up defeating Arsinosa, and then she's face to face with Christopher, one of the main antagonists of the whole story. They have this tense, sharp dialogue, really well written, and I'll show you just a clip here because it is that good.
You plotted this tragedy.
No, madam, I wouldn't take all the credit. The architects of this tragedy were the Septimontians themselves. A collective murder so entertainingly woven, with blood on every hand. Who's left to point a finger?
I absolutely love the way the game says this thing. I just think the whole thing is awesome. Anyway, we're snapped back into the Rover's perspective, and we've won the Great Agon. We're given this medal by Augusta, and the championship arc is over, but we're far from it because the real story, the deeper stuff, is just getting started. So that's the end of the first part. Now, there is a whole second part of this story. Now, originally, I planned to cover both parts of this story in this one video, just knock everything out at once. But I decided against that for two main reasons. Firstly, I don't want this video to get too long. I mean, it's probably already a little long as it is, but I want to keep things digestible. And second, the second part of the story just dropped, and the last thing I want to do is to spoil it for anyone who hasn't played this yet. That part deserves to be experienced fresh. So the next video I drop, probably early next week, is going to dive straight into part 2 of the story. And we finally wrap up the whole review of Wuthering Waves version 2.4 because honestly, it is a really good story. Now, what do I think of the first half so far? One thing that Wuthering Waves has shown us so far is not just that they're committed to the story, but they value the story. I mean, there are little details that I didn't cover in the breakdown, something I could not cover really. These are the micro expressions. Like for instance, when the Rover and Lupa go for a drink, instead of doing what most gacha games do, where they cut to black screen or skip to the next scene, Wuthering Waves actually animates the Rover drinking. Now, it's a tiny thing, totally inconsequential on its own, but these are the little touches that stick with me. They're the kind of details I really appreciate in storytelling. All these micro expressions, they're not just fluff, they make the world feel alive. So for the first half, I give it a solid 9 out of 10. There are things I didn't like, sure. I pointed out a couple of issues, but they were small. There was no part of the story that made me think, okay, this is a major problem. Overall, I think this part of the story is absolutely amazing. And as I mentioned earlier, look out for part 2 sometime next week. And of course, I'll revisit the whole Bullying and Augusta interaction because it's going to be something super important by the time we get to the ending. But hey, what do you think of this part so far? If you played the second part already, do you feel like there were any inconsistencies with the first part? Can you guess what I'm referring to with the Bullying and Augusta interaction? Especially after the events of part 2. And if you haven't played the second part yet, what do you think of the first part on its own? Did it blow you away? Did it leave you wanting more? Let me know everything in the comments, and as always, I will catch you all in the next one.